We're kicking off today with Raw, as this week's show saw Trish Stratus face Raquel Rodriguez for the final spot in the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match, and in Trish's first singles match on Raw since 2011. Rodriguez dominated for much of the match and likely would have won if it was not for Becky Lynch, whose interference gave Stratus the DQ win, but this win didn't come without its issues. Stratus was a part of several botches during the match, the most brutal being when she was thrown out of a fallaway slam and caught herself on her own knee, and she quickly rolled out of the ring. Stratus seemed injured, though perhaps it was just good selling, and later on, an exchange between Zoe Stark and Rodriguez resulted in the latter being taken down, and like Trish, awkwardly land on her knee. Despite the errors, Stratus proved that she still has what it takes to step in the ring with the current generation of women, and will go to London to compete for a guaranteed title opportunity. Win or lose, Stratus will make history as the first WWE Hall of Famer to ever compete in a Women's Money in the Bank ladder match, but this week's Raw was far from smooth sailing for the Canadian. From a legend to a relatively fresh name in WWE, as Bron Breakker also appeared on this week's Raw, ahead of tonight's World Heavyweight Championship match with Seth Rollins. Breakker was cool, calm, and collected as he was asked about Finn Balor's attack on Rollins, but many feel that WWE made a serious error in judgment with Breakker's booking. Online, it was argued that Breakker, not Balor, should have been the one to blindside the reigning World Heavyweight Champion, given that his match is coming sooner than Balor's challenge at Money in the Bank. Some argued that WWE could have told the story of Breakker trying to soften Rollins up ahead of tonight's NXT, rather than simply benefiting from Balor doing the attack instead. It would have also been more consistent with Breakker's character for him to attack Rollins, as he's been laying out NXT stars left and right since turning heel earlier this year. Prior to Raw, it had been announced that Rollins would be defending his title in an open challenge on the show, which never happened due to Finn's attack, which again would have been better served had it been Breakker. Given how over Rollins and his theme are right now, the fans in Cleveland would have been ecstatic to see him in action, and having Breakker rob them of the opportunity would have built some serious heat for their title match. While the odds of Breakker ending Rollins' title reign mere weeks after it began are low, a much better story could have been told this week. And do you think Breakker should have done more on Raw? More from Raw, as Rhea Ripley was scheduled to face Natalya on this week's show in a rematch from their 69-second encounter at Night of Champions. Natalya has said that she's just not been the same since her loss to Ripley in Jeddah, but last night's show wasn't any better for the Heart Dungeon graduate. Ripley wasted no time in getting the upper hand before the bell rang and sent Natalya into the steel steps and the ring apron. Rhea's attack continued with a riptide to finish Natalya off before the match started, and it's hoped that these losses are at least building to something for the Queen of Hearts. As for Ripley, her path of dominance as WWE Women's World Champion is showing no signs of slowing down, and whoever holds the Women's Money in the Bank briefcase in a few weeks may want to seriously reconsider cashing in on the Eradicator. But what did you think of this segment? Where do you want to see this feud go next, and are you enjoying seeing Ripley decimate Natalya, or should the Canadian be getting some payback? If you've seen Kevin Owens for long enough, you'll know that his anger can sometimes get the better of him, and the undisputed WWE Tag Team Champion can lose his cool. Lately, the Canadian has been having temper issues, something Sami Zayn has tried to address on this week's Raw, but Owens simply denied it. On commentary, Corey Graves suggested that Zayn and Owens employ the services of Dr. Shelby, who fans may remember for his hilarious segments with Kane and Daniel Bryan in 2012 when Team Hell No had their own anger issues. Fans were quick to catch the reference to Shelby, who returned to WWE in 2018 to help Bayley and Sasha Banks. And could the Doc return to TV as part of this angle? Only time will tell. Now, this week's Raw took place in Cleveland, Ohio, which was the hometown of The Miz before he left for Hollywood, but this week's homecoming was far from pleasant for the A-lister. During Raw, Miz claimed that he was going to answer Seth Rollins' open challenge prior to the World Heavyweight Champion being attacked by Finn Balor before issuing an open challenge of his own. To his surprise, Miz's challenge was answered by none other than Tommaso Ciampa, who not only returned to action, but returned with his old NXT theme music. As The Miz went to hug Ciampa, he attacked him, which caught the A-lister off guard. Ciampa then asked for the match to start and would go on to defeat his now former ally. Fans were thrilled to see Ciampa back from injury, with many taking to social media to express their delight, but why exactly is he back as a babyface? Well, according to reports, WWE is considering a DIY reunion, which would see Ciampa reunite with his old teammate Johnny Gargano. Given that Gargano is a face while Ciampa was last seen as a heel, a turn had to happen to make this reunion possible, and WWE decided to turn Ciampa into a good guy. Ciampa and Gargano are both faces and both on Raw, so it seems very likely that a DIY reunion is in the works. And what did you make of Tommaso Ciampa's return to action this week? Whether you like him or not, Hulk Hogan is one of the biggest names in wrestling history, so when news broke of a biopic in the works about him, fans weren't exactly surprised. That project got some serious weight when it was revealed that Chris Hemsworth had been cast as Hogan himself in early 2021, but we've heard very little about the project since then. Speaking with Chris Van Vliet, Hemsworth was asked about the future of the Hulk Hogan biopic, and the leading man admitted that he has no idea what is going on. He said, "Let's hope it comes out. I don't know what's happening with it at the moment, but there's a good story there. I'd love to tell it. I know the director Todd Phillips has been deep in the world of the Joker, but we've had conversations and yeah, fingers crossed." Phillips is set to direct the sequel to 2019's much-loved Joker film, which will see Joaquin Phoenix reprise the titular role, with Lady Gaga joining the Clown Prince of Crime's side as Harley Quinn. As for the Hogan biopic, fans will just have to keep waiting to see what happens, but for the time being, there won't be any immortal leg drops from Hemsworth on the silver screen. Right now, fewer acts are more over in WWE than the Judgment Day, as the quartet of Finn Balor, Damian Priest, Rhea Ripley, and Dominic Mysterio often get the loudest reactions on Raw. Ever since the draft, it's been reported that JD McDonough could be joining the group, something that has been teased on TV, but there may be other plans in motion instead. When Ringside News reached out to inquire about McDonough's situation, they were asked a rhetorical question, with a member of Creative questioning who said he's going to join the group. That same member of Creative also asked, "How do you know it's not just him rubbing up against them to give him a little boost?" implying that McDonough isn't going to be a part of the group after all. JD McDonough was one of many NXT call-ups to the main roster, and it's no secret that Triple H is a fan of his work, and has been ever since McDonough's WWE debut back as part of NXT UK. Right now, we can't say for certain whether McDonough will join the Judgment Day, or if he's just getting the rub in another way, and what do you want to see in the future of the Irish Ace? While WWE's head of talent and head of creative may be a big fan of JD McDonough, Triple H is far from being the man in charge, as that role resides with Vince McMahon. Despite the game's duties, his father-in-law has the power to overrule any decision relating to talent or creative, and what does Vince McMahon make of JD McDonough? We know that in the past it was a McMahon call for a McDonough segment to be pushed back, and that Vince has done this multiple times with the Irish superstar. A member of Creative who spoke to Ringside News revealed that Vince doesn't have anything to say about JD yet, revealing that McMahon's changes to the segment order was not specifically because of McDonough. Instead, these changes were just McMahon being McMahon, and just so happened to affect McDonough, but the source added that the McMahon jury may still be out when it comes to JD. After success in NXT UK and NXT, McDonough is looking to move on to even bigger things on the main roster, but he'll have to make sure to impress Triple H and Vince McMahon before that can happen. And we're ending with Jeff Hardy, who remains immensely popular in the wrestling world, and recently returned to AEW after close to a year away dealing with a DUI. In addition to AEW, Jeff is trying to turn his life around for good and leave his demons in the past, and that includes not putting himself in situations that could go wrong. Speaking on his Extreme Life podcast, Matt Hardy revealed that Jeff has put his foot down by choosing not to compete at indie events, aware that appearing at these events comes with risks. Matt added that Jeff also wants to limit the amount of signings and conventions he does to 2 a month, and we hope that these rules can help Jeff turn his life around for good.